eidos, essences or ideas. As stated, the eidos are the necessary essences or ideas, in virtue of instantiating which every contingent thing comes into being. Such things can be physical objects, thoughts or values. For example, instantiation of the idea of or essence of man in a particular individual, say Husserl, is what making that particular individual count as a man. Now, these essences are characterized by three features. 1. There is no existential import for these essences, that is, the positing of essence does not imply any positing of individual existence. 2. An essence is not a psychological item, that is, for their existence, just like numbers, essences are not dependent on anyone thinking of them. 3. We can only know essences through a non-perceptual type of intuition, an immediate seeing distinct from the sensory seeing of experience. Whereas perceptual intuition gives objects which are supposed to exist in space and time, essential intuition gives us objects whose existence is not presupposed, even though it may very well be illustrated or exemplified with regard to specific instances. And because of this, the intuitive exemplification of the eidos or pure essence can take place just as well in fantasy or acts of imaginative intuition. Essential intuition through eidetic reduction. According to Husserl, the essential intuition mentioned above has to be carried out by way of a peculiar process termed as eidetic reduction. The spell of naturalism makes it so difficult for all of us to see essences or ideas, says Husserl in his essay Philosophy as a Rigorous Science. Our minds are so choked up with factual beliefs and scientific presumptions that unless we first clean out this Augean stable, we shall be unable to gain an unimpeded view of the essences. Therefore, the first step in the process of essential intuition is what he calls creation of the epoch. Epoch. The epoch or suspension is described in ideas. In the epoch, I debar myself from using any judgment that concerns spatio-temporal reality, but without denying or doubting such judgments. Husserl states there. Roughly, this is a kind of mental purge akin to Descartes' methodological doubt. In epoch, the phenomenologist leaves behind the ordinary natural world, brackets all questions of truth or reality, and simply describes the contents of consciousness. It is a kind of abstention from or bracketing of all factual beliefs and scientific presumptions. Thus, in epoch, the external world is set out of action, and it is so maintained constantly and vigilantly, so that the attention is concentrated on the contents of consciousness. Transcendental ego. Thus, in the first stage of eidetic reduction, one disconnects himself from the external physical world and keeps it bracketed. Once this stage is attained to, the next stage begins, which is more radical. In this stage, there should exist no I. The natural human ego, specifically one's own, it is to be reduced to the transcendental ego. Thus, one must bracket belief in the existence of selves or persons, including one's own self. Inasmuch as human ego is thought of as necessarily embodied, such embodiment too is to be set out of action along with all other physical objects. Thus, everything which retains one's identity as a person over the course of time is suspended, and what remains after such absolute bracketing of the empirical ego is what Husserl terms the transcendental ego, the pure consciousness, before which the distilled essences are to be paraded. With this, eidetic reduction comes to its culmination, and one is prepared for the development of what Husserl calls the theory of the essential nature of the transcendentally purified consciousness, in which the notion of intentionality is pivotal.